everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to the second episode of Avenue Talks. I'm your host, Tori, and I'm joined by Igor. You wear a lot of hats, so I'll let you explain to the listeners who you are and what you do.
Hi, Tori. Thanks for having me. Where do I start? My current job is called Creative Director AI Technologies. I am working in a post-production house, Fillmore, and I'm responsible for two things at the same time. One is building pipelines around generative AI, so creating visuals for visual effects. And the other part is using AI to automate things that are less creative but very tedious. That includes things like VFX breakdown, when you have a season of 14 episodes and you need to analyze each for VFX, potential VFX work, and that takes days and days and days of VFX producers. So I'm trying to help them by developing a pipeline that's going to do half of that job. It's going to flag more than necessary, but it's easier to filter out more than just to read the whole script and try to flag all the VFX shots in there. I'm developing pre-edit system that would automatically do the first very, very, very preliminary draft for the editors, not to waste time into technically assembling something that can be assembled by a machine, basically. So I try to use AI in order to help creatives be more creative by offloading non-creative, boring stuff off of them.
I like how you put that. You use AI to help creatives be more creative, because there's a lot of talk about AI and AI taking over creatives' jobs. And I wanted to ask, what is your perspective on that whole dilemma, the whole discussion?
It's a difficult question because I understand that, yes, this will affect the jobs. It's already affecting jobs. Yes, there were a lot of cases where AI was more of an excuse to fire people than actual case. Because there are still bad actors and there always will be, and they will find any excuse to do weird stuff. But at the same time, I am using AI for my side hustles. I develop a few apps, and now I can develop apps on a pretty good level without using actual software engineers. My background allows me to understand what's happening and build a structure and have a proper approach in order to know when AI is doing something weird and when it's not. And so if before I would use a team of programmers and wait for weeks and weeks to have something iterated or done, now I can do it myself within days. Mm-hmm. And that's crazy. And I understand that's going to affect, of course, software engineers, for example. So there are a lot of areas where AI will disrupt. That's for sure.
How do you see your role as an entrepreneur and using AI in using it like ethically, and also making sure that you are keeping track that AI for example, the code that you're using in your apps is sourced ethically?
I am quite, I have an unpopular opinion about that.
Let's hear it.
And the opinion is everybody steals in a way. Yeah, sometimes we call it get inspired by. Yeah. AI is just way better at stealing. So it's just way more effective. If a human being would be inspired by 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 sources, AI can be automatically take thousands of sources and assemble something off of it. And yes, that ends up in having a very similar AI slop that you see online, for example.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you go into ethics, and then you have to go way, way, way back when people started doing that anyway. So I'm and especially about code, I'm not very much concerned about it. How do you think most programmers do that? If they don't know how something works, they go online, they find a piece of code, they implement it. Same stuff that AI does in mere seconds. So I'm kind of relaxed about that. I don't worry too much.
No, but you do raise a good point. And one of the things that you said is that AI is a disruptor and is going to be disrupting many industries. And since we are on the Avenue Talks podcast, I do have to mention VP. And I wanted to say, or ask you rather, how is AI going to affect virtual production?
I was very excited about virtual production. So before I was creative director at Technologies, I was head of virtual production department. And I was building a studio in Amsterdam, and the idea of the studio was to bring VP to a less expensive service. So we built virtual production studio based not on LED volume, which is very expensive, especially as a starting investment, but actually using beamers, using projectors. Very powerful, very bright projectors. And we used 5 Mars for tracking instead of proprietary, very expensive solutions. And it worked beautifully. All of that was there. Fizz, focus, iris, zoom, tracking. Everything was run with a single 5090 machine, and it was very, very good at it. And unfortunately, the market is not enough to be interested in VP, so that even a studio like that is sustainable. So there are a few players in Netherlands on a VP arena, and I kind of feels like there's no space for more because there's no such demand for VP locally here. Now, with the arrival of AI, of course, that's going to affect VP, in my opinion, as well. Because if something could be done before in a studio, I mean, it's not just VP, any studio work. Say, for example, I have a friend who he takes products and he creates images with AI of those products on models, on AI models, wearing those. Something back in the day you would do in a studio with an actual model. So stuff like that is gonna be taken away by AI, by people using AI to do that. Same for VP. So something you could do easily on VP, now probably AI will take over. So VP will get into more of a niche. And I think we already somewhere where we can tell that VP is already in a niche that people know when to use one and when not to use one. Getting there, not there yet, but getting there. And so it will stay that like that. It's very hard to predict. I don't think VP is going to vanish, but I do think it will shrink a little bit. So the amount of VP studios will shrink a little bit.
Yeah, there was a bit of a boom.
Oh, that was yeah.
And then people were really excited about it, and it's still cool
and so
technology.
was I. Yeah, and I'm still very excited about it. And you can do a lot of cool stuff on it, but also you can misuse it in a way that you can try to use it in a situation when you shouldn't.
Well, maybe you can explain us and to our listeners as well. When is a good moment to use VP and when is it not?
I would say that so the reason VP didn't exactly take off with many clients is in order to do VP, when you do VP, you gain some freedom, but you also have to let go of some freedom. So for example, you want to shoot at sunset and you want that sunset to be there. We actually had a project like that. It was Hal and Hal, and they shot a commercial and video, both video and photo, in our studio. And there was a sunset. One of the shots was a sunset. So they have a lot of drinks. And for the whole day, they were just changing bottles and glasses with those drinks. This is a perfect example for when you need VP. But if it was drama and you wanted to shoot at sunset, you would know you have 10 minutes. You would prepare around that. And if some lucky accident happens on the set, you want to shoot 90 degrees left or right on 180 degrees or to the sky or to the ground, you can do that. Now on VP set, you have to give up all of that. You have your sunset forever, but you can only shoot one direction. You want to shoot the floor, you have to build the floor and spend on production design. You want to shoot to the side, now you have to rotate the whole virtual world, which is not that long, and set and all of that. It's not that long, but again, if you're on a real location, it's just turn the camera, especially if it's like run and gun shoot. So I guess whatever you gave up wasn't worth it in the end. Now, I think the problem is that people tried to replicate reality on VP. I don't think you should. I think VP is perfect for stuff when you cannot match it to reality. Sci-fi, horror, everything that you cannot look at it and say, it doesn't look real, because you've never been in a horror situation before, or inside on a spaceship, or in a fantasy world. So when it's supposed to be fakey, and you cannot put a finger where exactly it's fake, that's where VP shines really, and it's super flexible and stuff like that. And then there are niche applications, like for example, I do believe so. Sometimes there are situations you can do in real life, but it's so difficult to organize and expensive that you'd rather do it in VP. Best example, driving shots. I mean, you can do the driving shot the old way, yeah, but it's all the things you need to go through and block the streets and have all the rights and blah, blah, blah. You just do it in VP, and if you set it up correctly, it's just going to work. And you have all the flexibility of rotating your cars, the worlds, the cameras, all of it the way you want, and it just works.
Also, extremely remote locations. If you want to film in Antarctica.
Yeah, if you cannot go there.
Bring Antarctica to you.
Yeah, but again, Antarctica, you've seen films in Antarctica, right? And Antarctica is a very difficult example, at least for us in doing projection-based VP. Antarctica is somewhere where the latitude is so huge, like the reflection from the snow is very, very bright, but at the same time you have a hood, for example, where it's pitch black, and you just cannot replicate it on a projection volume. I don't think you can replicate it on LED volume also. So that kind of stuff, again, you're trying to replicate real world on a VP set. It's easy to put a finger where it doesn't work. Now, if it was off-world Antarctica on Mars, I don't know.
Yeah, some kind of desolate location. Yeah. I understand.
With different colors and stuff, then you wouldn't be able to put a finger, and then it works a lot better, I think.
So what I'm hearing is like non-existing locations and a lot of editorial and commercial shoots. That's when VP really shines through, when you want to control that one variable, and car plates.
Yeah.
And I wanted to backtrack a little bit, because something that you said, it wouldn't work on a projection-based virtual production and or LED wall. And I wanted you to explain what is the difference between the two workflows, projection-based and LED wall.
Yeah, so one thing why I liked projection a little more than LEDs, for example, is because if you look around, most of the colors and everything you see with your eyes is reflected light. So there's one source, the sun, and then there's artificial source, the lights and lamps and everything. And the rest just reflects that. The beamer is the same thing. It's just a reflection of the wall. Same experience you get in the cinema theater. Now, LED volume is a source of light. Every pixel is a source of light, even if it's just a gray wall that's supposed to reflect the light off of it, it's still emitting light. And that just kind of feels a little wrong, and you could see it with your eyes. It's a little bit off, and it's like almost subconscious. It's very difficult to tell. But at the same time, beamers are so picky about lighting the physical space, because any spill you have, black levels gone. In general, achieving black levels is almost impossible in there.
It's a little gray washed.
Yeah, it's washed out. You cannot have, so we tried several things. We tried, of course, the white wall, no blacks at all, too much. We ended up having something like an 18% gray, and that gave us enough blacks, and it's still, we had latitude in whites. So there's, but the latitude is limited. The latitude being difference between the blacks, the very, very dark pixels and the very bright pixels. Now on LED volume, it's a lot bigger, of course. The latitude is huge, so you can replicate like sunset and things like that more, and the camera will show it better than on beamer. But if you know that limitation, if you're not trying to do that stuff, not trying to have source of light on a VP set, like in your camera, like sun, then it works surprisingly well, because one of the things that it does not have inherently, doesn't have moire. So all LED volumes, they consist of pixels, and if your resolution of the camera is closer to the resolution of the pixels, then you would see moire, like the noise in the image. So you always have to keep your background a little bit out of focus so you don't see it. Not a problem with the beamer. Basically, it's blobs of light blending nicely into each other.
For me, that's what stood out the most when I visited your studio in Amsterdam, is the fact that you could focus entirely on the background.
On the wall, yeah. And that's pretty cool. And especially, again, coming back to car plates. So when you shoot a car, and you obviously need reflections as well. Now, most of the cars, apart from Cybertruck, they have a curvature to it. So some design. And it magnifies everything that it reflects. Now, if it's a ceiling, LED ceiling, which usually is chosen to be less dense in pixels, you can see every individual pixel in reflection. And then you have to fix it in post. And then it kind of beats the purpose of having virtual production, because in the end you have to again fix stuff in post. Now, when you have a butterfly, a frame with a beamer shining through it, it just, as I said, blobs of light, and it reflects beautifully, and you just cannot tell that it's not real reflection. It works great. So stuff like that, and flexibility of scale. So you want to scale down, you just move your beamer closer, or you zoom, and same source, same resolution, nothing changes. With LEDs, you want to go bigger, you need to add panels. You add panels, you need more horsepower, more video cards, and it gets expensive really, really fast. With beamers, it's a lot easier. So budget-wise, it's a great technology. I mean,
the way you explain it, it seems like, why aren't more people doing this? Why isn't it as popular as LED wall if it's so accessible and it has so many great advantages?
It's difficult to pull it off in terms of lights. So what I've seen many times in our studio, when people came who are not knowledgeable about the technology, they would, of course, forget about the background. They would light the talent, and they would light, and it would light, and it would light, and in the end, they would spill so much light in the background. Mm-hmm. They would look in the camera and go, it's something doesn't work, and then still they would go with it instead of trying to fix it. So there is a cinematographer, Bert Pot. He is one of the first person in Netherlands or in the world to actually shoot with VP using beamers. So back in the day when it wasn't even virtual production, he just shot plates, and then he projected those plates on a beamer and shot people in front of that. And he came up with many elegant solutions. Like one of them is basically he's building a matte box, like a reverse matte box around a screen, so that you completely block out any spill. You only leave the window for the camera to see through. And then in front of that system, you have your talent. You can shine as much light as you want. It will look still natural because there will be contrast in the back. There will be nice light in the front, and it works. But it takes some effort, and it requires understanding. That's one of the things in virtual production that I think is one of the reasons it's not flying, is because it requires extra knowledge. And sometimes this knowledge is extra technical. And so most creative people, they just don't want to go there. They are used to doing stuff the way they used to do in real life. And they don't understand why it doesn't work. I'm using the same approach I use in real life, and it doesn't work. So it has to be a different mentality for this to work properly.
How was it for you when you first started experimenting with virtual production? Did you know at that point, this is going to be a lot, I have to learn a lot, but it might be the defining move of my career?
I came from a very convenient, I would say, position, because before becoming VP person, I was most of my life director, before that DP, before that visual effects artist. Actually, I had a small VFX boutique. So, and I was a little bit into gaming stuff. So I knew Unreal, I knew cinematography, I knew how creative people treat their picture. And I could blend those worlds, and I basically could translate what clients wanted in our set into technical solutions most of the time. So for me, this was one of our key selling points, that we can blend those worlds together. But there should be more people trained towards that, because when the client comes and they have a big team and they have a gaffer and the cinematographer, and there's producers and a bunch of people, and then there's you who is perceived as some technical guy. So let him say technical guy. We're not going to listen to his advice about lighting and stuff. And they do their own way. Of course, they end up kind of failing. So yeah, it's as I said, it's a bit of a different mentality, and it's doable. It's just we decided that when we finally managed to break this wall, we're going to be so much in debt.
But it's an interesting point that you made, because just on our previous episode, we were talking that virtual production industry needs more generalists, and that's exactly what you're saying as well. People with experience in the tech world, but also on set, and knowing how to blend those two worlds together. And you were on set the entire day today getting ready for your workshop. I want you to tell us, what kind of prep were you doing? What's your workshop about? What goes into doing a hands-on experience like that?
So as I said, the idea that virtual production works best in genres that are not real life experiences. So back in the day, when I was building the studio, I did things that I called VP Fridays. So every other Friday, I would invite people to come and see how virtual production works, and I would come up with stuff every time, because it was also a way to learn new things and to see if they work. And one of the things we did was a short film we shot right in front of the live audience during that VP Friday. And it was a tracking shot in the corridor of an abandoned hospital. So it was a horror shot with a lady with a severed arm and all the horror thingies. And it was so much to do. And it was probably the most memorable VP Friday, and probably the most memorable thing that we did as well as the studio people, that I thought the students are gonna really, really enjoy that. So I want to replicate that, and we're gonna do a tracking shot. So it's a great example of how you can use VP to do traveling without moving. So the idea is basically it's gonna be a treadmill and a few other components, and we're gonna travel through a corridor of an abandoned hospital. But one of the cool things about VP is that it allows you to, if you connect DMX, if you know how DMX works, it allows you to let the environment, in this case Unreal Engine, control your light. So when you move through the corridor, which of course this is a horror corridor, so there's a lot of red blinking lights, which of course always happens in the hospital. A lot of red blinking lights. No, but nobody cares.
At least according to horror movies.
Yes, in horror movies it does happen. And so you have those red blinking lights in the backgrounds, and then when you approach that space, the physical lights turn red and start blinking, and so it feels like you are in the environment, and it all happens automatically. Once you set it up nicely, you level the white balance and levels and everything. It just works, and all you have to do is repeat a few takes until you're happy with the performance, and the rest is taken care of. And I think VP is really great at it. When you can spend some time in preparation, make sure it works visually, and then you have your flexibility. You want to shoot closer, you want to shoot wider. So this is one of the selling points for me, was always for VFX people, is that in VFX, every new shot is a new budget. In VP, once you did your homework, you want to go wider, you want to go longer lens, you want a different angle, anything is possible because the environment is there, everything is set up.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we're going to do during the workshop. So we're going to shoot in the corridor, moving, and we're going to shoot different directions, and the lights are going to blink, and
and we're going to have so much fun.
Yeah, and there's going to be blood, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Well, I feel like DMX is another one of those things that people look at and they think this is so complicated and it's so convoluted. How do you approach that? And what are some other fun ways to experiment with DMX lighting and VP that people find is underrated?
Well, that's what basically we appeared to be the first one in the Netherlands to actually implement that. So before that, the things were, there are Unreal people who are in control of the environment, of the background, and all the lights and everything belong to them. And then there are DMX people and light people and gaffer who are the masters of the physical lights. And they were completely separated from each other. So if a cinematographer wants the light to be one stop brighter, or 3200 white balance, or something like that, or +5 tint or minus green, or whatever, language that technical people don't speak, like period.
Yeah.
They don't know what that means. And they would do funny stuff, and they would argue, and they would end up badly for everyone. Now, what I try to do is just to give those controls to the physical light people. So what we did is, it's there in Unreal. So we just plugged in all the virtual lights into DMX, and then send that information into the panel of whatever DMX person comes into our studio. And then he has controls over the lights in the physical and virtual world on the same panel. So he can dim it down and change the white balance and change the color and all that with his panel until he's happy and the cinematographer is happy. And we have nothing to do with it because this is all on them. And that's how I basically got into DMX. That was my idea, to use DMX in order to help creative people get away from technical stuff, use the tools they're used to, and just control the virtual world the same way they would control the physical world. So that, and then of course inherently I realized that you can use it for moving tracking shots, and that would control the lights, and off we go.
It creates a very immersive, dynamic environment. And like you said, it's a one single point of control, and you
Mhm.
don't have two departments, two whole different departments trying to communicate with each other when they don't even speak the same
Yeah,
language.
and they are very different departments. And apart from lights, virtual art department is trying to take care of so many things.
I wanted to go back to, you talked about your VP Fridays. And I wanted to sort of introduce that as a concept of, you had those weeks, you had that day to experiment, trying new and different things. And I think for a lot of students, especially those of us who studied at Breda University of Applied Sciences and have the possibility to work with the stage, this is a really fun opportunity to experiment with this new technology and to come in with crazy ideas. Like, for example, with your workshop, the tracking shot, what are some common mistakes that students should try to avoid coming into the XR stage with someone as yourself coming in with a lot of experience?
Since it's a inherently game engine, it's very difficult to achieve realism in it. And so the common mistake would be to go too wide when you see, because it's a feeling that, well, we have such a huge screen, let's see all of it, let's go as wide as we can, let's have everything in focus, let's have it the brightest humanly possible. And then you see that it's not working. It's a game engine, and it's inherently so unless you using something like Chaos Arena, which is another rendering technology, and it really makes it a lot more believable in terms of rendering quality. Unreal Engine can be realistic, but only to a certain extent. And so one of the biggest mistakes is trying to show too much. I mean, in the end of the day, on the real locations, you would go as long as quite often, you would go quite long in the lenses, you would open up, you would blur the hell out of the background, and you would be happy. You would say, ooh, that looks so cinematic. Everything is blurred. It's nice. And then once you're in the VP set, something breaks in those people, and they go, let's just show all of it. Because I can see it with my eyes. I want to see the camera showing the same stuff, and then it breaks. So I would say just forget about the background. It's there to add depth to the story, not to the fact that it's virtual production per se.
Good point. I mean, that goes back to what you were saying. There are moments to use VP, and then there are moments not to use VP. And it's just a way to tell your story, just another tool.
Definitely, yeah. And again, the stories may differ, and some stories like VP more than others. I wouldn't shoot a documentary on the virtual production set, probably.
How come?
Well, the whole idea is documentary is to be real, true to the source, and when you try to fake it, it kind of takes off the edge.
I could see it working for talking headshots, though not the day-to-day slice of life that you're trying to get from your from your subject.
There is a good example of when this might work and be still realistic. So, for example, you have a location where it's very expensive to shoot at, for example, or very difficult to organize, say, Central Station or a museum, Rijksmuseum. But you can still shoot like a wide shot, like an establishing shot. But shooting like a full day of a dialogue with mediums and close-ups and stuff is way too much. So what I would do in that case is that I would use a technology that is also AI related that is called GSplats. It's basically a way to convert your physical world into a 3D asset. And I would basically scan that world with that lighting, with that environment that you shot it at. I would shoot an establishing shot because you cannot shoot legs anyways on an VR stage, VP stage. And then I would go medium and close-ups on the VP, as long as you want. You want to shoot for a week, be my guest. But you shot the establishing shot for a few hours, then you switch to real. The only caveat is that you have to be happy with the light, because Gaussian splats can be really a little bit, but not too much. It has inherent features like embedded shadows. If the shadows are there, you cannot take them out. And so if you're happy with what you have on the day, then it's one of those rare cases where you can try replicate real life in VP, but I wouldn't use Unreal for that, that's for sure.
It's interesting that you mentioned Gaussian spelling, because I feel like there's so much buzz about it now. I feel like it's the new VP, or it in most cases it's used in conjunction with virtual production. And what's your take on Gaussian splatting? Is this just a fad? Is there some
Oh
truth to
no,
it?
no, it's definitely way better than nerves. So there was a technology before that, nerves, neural radiant field something. Don't remember exactly what it stands for, but the idea that it was still geometry, so it was like a slow res 3D scan. And Gaussian splat is a different technology. It uses splats. It's basically, imagine if you kind of understand how JPEG works when it converts all the images into tiny gradients. So those are those tiny gradients, but in ovals, flat ovals, and there are millions and millions of them rotated differently in space. So no matter from which side you look at it, you see reflection and everything, and it works very, very well because basically it's a 3D picture. It's not a 3D world. It's not a mesh. It's a 3D picture in space. And so it looks realistic as hell if you did your job well and you scanned it. And also it's pretty easy to do on a basic level. So you just need your phone.
If you have an iPhone.
Yeah, you can, well, any phone. And if you can shoot manual without auto exposure and stuff, you can just walk around in a specific pattern with your video camera on and then run through an algorithm, and you will have your background. And then if you make sure the scale is right and everything is right, you put it in a virtual production stage, and it looks very, very, very good. Way better than anything you can achieve in Unreal Engine. I mean, it will take you way longer to achieve that in Unreal Engine than it would be in Gaussian Splat. As I said, the only downside is you have to be happy with what you see. But isn't that the fact when you actually shoot for real? You come to a location, you have your farm. You're not going to relight the farm or repaint the walls unless you have a Hollywood budget and change the cows to sheep. So, I mean, you have cows, you're happy with it. And then you just use whatever you have. So same stuff, basically. You just treat it as a fixed environment. You scan it, you're happy with it. Boom. Shoot.
It's a good analogy that you're making. We're trying to recreate on-set recording through GSplats. The only thing that you have to then consider is that you need to match your lighting.
Yeah. And with beamers, that's a lot more difficult than with LED volume.
Would that be because you can't get as black of blacks?
That because, as I said, it's very difficult in terms of light not being. So all the lights have to be side lights. Unless you build a matte box around your volume, and then you're good. But if you know how to work with your VP lights, with your lights on the VP stage, there's nothing that can stop you from doing it very, very realistically. I mean, as I said, Bert Port, check his website. You would see shots. I would never think that those are fake. Those are actually all VP shots. And it's broad daylight, sunshine, everything. Works like magic.
I'm going to throw some existential questions at you.
Go on.
What is the biggest misconception filmmakers have when they first step into the VP stage?
That it's super flexible and you can achieve anything you want. It's not.
And we've talked about it today. Yeah. There's a lot of things to consider, and you need to decide whether it's the right choice for you or not.
And it's very important to deliver that message before people show up, because they get so frustrated when they think everything is possible and then realize, oh, the screen is so small. Oh, you can't shoot to the floor. Or you can't shoot to the ceiling. Oh, it's so limiting. I didn't know that. And then, of course, you need to know what you're dealing with. It's a tool. It's not a magic pill. It's not a solution for everything. It's a tool you can use very, very well for some cases, and for some cases you just cannot.
There's a lot to be said about, well, it's a common expression, right, in the VP industry, fix it in pre. Mm-hmm. That's what we're all about. So you need to come in with that mindset that it's just a tool. You need to have all your assets ready. And then there is some room to play within those limitations.
Yep. Location scouting is very different in VP, but it's still same ideology. So quite often thing number one in VP, which is important to understand, that not often, unless again you have a Hollywood budget, you don't often need to build something from scratch. If you think of it, there's probably an asset already created for you. And there are quite a lot of nice assets and environments already on Unreal Engine Store. and you can use those and adapt to your taste. What we did on one of our events is we took a really, really nice environment of Rome, and there were like outside restaurants, street restaurants in there, and they had specific chairs in there. We didn't have those chairs, so what we did is we had a different chair. We scanned it, turned it into a 3D model, and we put those chairs into a virtual world. And now you have same chairs in physical and virtual world, and that sells it. That already blends the background to the foreground, and it's like tricks like that help sell the illusion.
I want you to keep telling stories. What's the most challenging VP setup that you've had to do? How did you solve it?
Well, we didn't quite. I can tell what was the most challenging, but we didn't quite solve it because it was one of our events called VP Days. So I decided to go as ambitious as you can get. So I decided, let's shoot a scene of 2 stunt people fighting on top of a moving train cart. So there was a train going through a valley, and 2 people fighting, and the train would go into a tunnel. So lights go black,
and they have to duck.
and they have to duck, and then it will go bright, and then we'll fight, and then one of the actors would throw the other one off the train, before putting a dynamite on fire into his pocket, and then he was supposed to go boom in the background.
Was the dynamite practical though?
Yeah, it was a practical dynamite. He fell off, and then I made a blueprint so that on a press of a button, the explosion goes off. And the source of explosion was always traveling with the train, so it's always on a specific distance. So all you have to do is like wait for 3 seconds, press a button, boom, on the background. So that was a lot of fun to do. And one of the things in the tunnel, I decided to change the direction. So while it's pitch black, we flipped the camera 180, and so we were going into the tunnel, looking towards towards the front of the train, and then going out of the tunnel. Boom! We're all of a sudden out of the looking at the back of the train. So because I wanted to amplify that change of direction, and everything is go crazy, and something happened in the tunnel, and they were fighting, and there was like blinking lights and blah blah, and then boom, we're going this different direction. So but all of that was happening live. In front of the audience. And of course, when you do that, it's quite difficult to make it very realistic. I mean, I'm happy with the way it turned out, taking all the inputs, but...
And how crazy your idea was that you pulled it off.
Would it work in a film? No. Would we be able to actually make it work if it was an actual project? Yeah, and that's a good example of how you can use virtual production. Crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. You have so much experience behind you in VP, and you have experience bringing these crazy ideas to life. What made you want to step away from VP in the first place? Why are you exploring this new area?
As I said, despite the fact that we tried to make it very affordable, much more affordable than lead volume, we just didn't have enough clients. We didn't have enough interest in VP. And one of the reasons I think is to blame is actually AI. Because... So
you joined the dark side, is what you're saying.
So in a way, because whatever you could do in the VP to save the budget and do many things in one day, now you can kind of do a lot of that in AI. And even though it's not going to be very good, because the shelf life of most things that companies do, I mean, let's exclude big companies with big campaigns. The shelf life of that stuff is like, what, half a day, half a week? Nobody cares. And if it's AI slop, still nobody cares. And you can do that. Unless you're McDonald's, and then there's going to be a big argument about that. But if you're a little bit less than McDonald's, it's going to work. And so people I think VP started to go up in adoption. And then AI came and kind of broke that tendency a little bit by taking over a bit. And that's why I think it's going to become a niche of things that are very difficult, at least for now, to replicate in AI. VP is still going to do a way better job than AI, and it's still going to be actual actors in front of that, not some AI slop.
Exactly. There is a world where they can both exist in harmony and maybe help one another create that environment or speed up the process a little bit more.
One of the very exciting things that I saw pretty recently is when you can generate an image in AI and then turn that into a Gaussian split world and go ahead and put that under the background. And so now you have, at least for previous, at least for like somewhat a concept, proof of concept, you have something you can actually shoot in front of in mere minutes. Okay. And then you can have like a pitch spec spot of or a short film to get the budget for the real thing. So you can use AI to achieve something that back in the day would cost a lot of money. You don't want it to be final quality. You want it just to be good enough to impress the potential producer or investor or whatever. And that's what AI is, I think, is really good for. It helps you to get somewhere where before you couldn't get because of the budget. Now you can. But again, this is not the end point. This is not the end game. It's the idea to get into the real stuff with the help of AI to get noticed.
I like this reframe. It's not going to replace content. It's going to help you get a better idea, make those first sketches, first draft, first concept to get you to where you want to be in the final output.
That's one of the futures, yeah. There's a much worse one.
And we don't have to talk about it here. Well, keeping it light and positive, even though my next question was actually going to be something that you mentioned early on in our conversation, is that there is not as much space for smaller VP studios to grow, at least from your experience working here in the Netherlands, when these big players with big budgets, better, higher quality equipment are pushing you out of the scene.
They weren't pushing us out. We were in different leagues. For example, there's a studio in Amsterdam, right? Everybody knows about it. It's Ready Set. They have a large LED volume. They did iHostage, an Apple film, or Netflix film. Yeah. Netflix. And the interesting thing about it is that unless you've seen behind the stages and everything, you don't know that iHostage wasn't shot at Ready Set Studios. It was built in a warehouse. The studio was built on a bigger scale because it wasn't big enough. And so that's the funny thing, that large players like Netflixes and Apples and HBOs of the world, they want scale that is bigger than whatever we have in Netherlands. And smaller players they want something more affordable. And so that's what we try to play. So whatever we tried to do was for the client, the potential client that is, they cannot afford Ready Set anyways. And they would come to us and still have not the full experience, but close enough for their product and good enough to be shown. But as I said, it turned out that we either suck at marketing, which we did, but also that the market is just not big enough.
It's changing. Those players that you were targeting, they turned to AI because it was an even more affordable solution for them. Yeah. That's what I think is probably happening right now. And then the big people with the big budget, the big producers, they're turning to the studios that can deliver that kind of quality with this grand.
I mean, being in AI, I know that it can get you about, visually, at least for now, it can get you up to 80%? For smaller players, that is enough. For bigger players, they want 100. They have the bar too high, and AI cannot achieve that bar.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet, at least. Yeah. And so for them, it's not a threat yet. And for smaller players, if it's 80% good, good for me.
Tell us, what are you working on nowadays? You mentioned that you have a lot of side hustles that are using AI, and one of the projects that you talked to me about, I'm really, really keen on sharing on the podcast.
I develop apps. So one of the apps that I had an idea for about 15 years now or something. So it was a pain, my personal pain as a director, right? Every time I needed actors, I would go to the same acting agencies. They would have the same library of people, and I would choose plus or minus the same people. And then sometimes you would choose people based on the photo, headshot, and that turned out to be outdated. They don't look anywhere near to what they look now.
Kind of like a dating profile.
Yeah. And so you ended up choosing the best from whatever. I always wanted a solution for myself. Then when I would sometimes see a person on the street, and I know he's not or she is not an actress, but she could be such an extra in the background because just of the way she looks or behaves and stuff. So sometimes you can find gems in the street, and I always wanted some system that will allow these people to actually apply for roles, and there was not, because usually these people don't go to castings because you have to sit in the queue with actual actors. You feel embarrassed, you're nowhere any
Intimidated.
good. You're intimidated, so you want to do it from the comfort of your home. So I came up with this idea. I called it street cast, so to cast people on the street. And back in the day, I poured a lot of money, everything I had, basically, into developing that. And I developed a MVP and tried to make it fly. And then the war happened, and then we had to stop everything. And then I moved here. And then my team was scattered, and it was difficult to bring it back and keep working on it. And then AI showed up. And I was listening to a podcast about Cursor, which is one of the tools you use to have AI code for you. And I decided to give it a try. And this is how my journey in AI development started. So I basically, after many, many, many failures, because it's not a magic pill, AI still can screw up, and it does on a regular basis. But you can use it to actually get results. Pretty good results. And so I rebuilding my Streetcast now, and along with that, I also build into other apps. Everything has to do with filmmaking, because I'm still a filmmaker in my heart. And so one of the apps is a short film streaming platform called Bus Stop Films. Bus Stop, because the idea is it's for commuters. So you go in somewhere, you have 30 minutes worth of a bus ride or a train ride. You go to the app, you choose 30 minutes as your length, generate playlist, and then you watch short films. Short, nice, entertaining, not highbrow, not like super artsy, more of an entertaining comedy, action, blah, blah, blah stuff.
Real, not AI generated.
Not AI, real stuff. And then, instead of a brain rot doom scroll, you just watch short films. And if that flies, that's going to be a paid subscription thing, and we want to share that with the filmmakers who are on the platform. So we want to make short film a actually thing that can be monetized. And so down the road, the idea is to actually, even if it all flies well, to then produce films as well. So it's going to be like Netflix special, but it's going to be BS Films specials.
A bus stop special.
Yeah, well, we call it BS Films for short. And pun intended.
Pun intended.
Yeah. And so we're going to produce films as well. So that's one of those, and pretty happy with how the app turned out so far. We're now running the test period for 3 months to see how people are going to use it. So it's free for now for 3 months.
Let the people know where can they find your app, where can they download it, how can they send their supports.
You can just go to bsfilms.app, app. And there's a link. It works both on Android and iOS. And I would be really, really grateful if you try this app, then to give feedback. There's a button for that. And as a payment for a free subscription, there's going to be questionnaires in there that pop up occasionally. They're short. There's only 3 of them, but that helps us understand how you actually use it, because we have our idea. But so far, looking at the questionnaires, I understand the commuters, the commuting is the least of all places where people actually watch short film.
They watch it
at home, at work, and before bed, and not on the bus. But we'll see. Well, it's not too many people at the moment.
I love this initiative, especially the messaging around it. Why doom scroll when you can watch an entertaining story, a real story that's not going to...
And actually, by that,
pollute your brain. Yeah.
You're gonna help those filmmakers
as well.
Yeah, and help them make another film, maybe.
It's very community oriented. Like you said, you are a filmmaker still at heart.
I am.
I wanted to ask you if you have some closing words for our podcast. The time's come to say goodbye. Where can the people follow you? Where can they find you?
Well, people can find me on social medias, or they can find me on my website. There is thatukrainianguy.rocks. I kid you not. I know it's a very, very humble URL, but it's actually how I'm registered as AZP and
as a
Netherlands
freelancer.
As a freelancer. Yeah, that's my brand name, That Ukrainian Guy. So there, and I don't know, my final words probably would be a message that what helps me prevail and get new jobs and get new achievements and stuff is that I'm not afraid of new things. I still enjoy learning, and I'm really get excited. And when I go full on into an area,
Embrace
and
it.
Yeah, and I embrace it. And so, yes, there are threats to AI and there are threats to all the technologies, and it was always there. But you can either just spend time worrying about it all the time, or you can embrace it and use it for the better. Because of course, there are people who are they're bad actors. They're gonna use AI for bad stuff, but you can do good stuff and just learn how to use it and do that good stuff for people.
I love it. Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on to the Avenue Talks podcast.
Thanks for having me.
For all the listeners, you can catch Igor's workshop in advanced cinematography, moving shots with DMX lighting and production design on Friday, February 13th at the Breda University of Applied Sciences. If you're in and around Breda in the Netherlands, there are limited spots available, so make sure that you sign up to the email virtualproduction@avenuecov.eu to participate in our hands-on workshop. That's virtualproduction@avenuecov.eu. And to all of our listeners who are interested in exploring virtual production more, please visit our LinkedIn page at AvenueCov or our website, avenuecov.eu, to gain more hands-on experience with virtual production at our stage here at Breda University of Applied Sciences. We have a ton of workshops lined up for the month of February and a ton of other fun programs to help you get started on your journey. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.